Now, you'll have heard of supermoons and eclipses, but people around the world have been looking to the skies and enjoying an even rarer event. It's called a super blue blood moon and happens when a total lunar eclipse, a blood moon and a supermoon all happen at the same time. In countries like the US, it's not been seen in more than 150 years. Our science correspondent, Victoria Gill, has been craning her neck at an observatory in the UK and sent us this report.
Earth's most familiar satellite is putting on a very special show. This rare triple lunar event that some are calling the super blue blood moon.
What is it that's giving us this kind of triple lunar show?
So there's three things that are happening at once. One is that the moon is in an elliptical orbit around the Earth, so sometimes it's closer than at other times and looks a little larger. That's come to be known as a supermoon. Another is that it's also a lunar eclipse, the blood moon. So that's when the moon passes into the shadow of the Earth. And the third thing is that it's a blue moon, and that's a term that's come to mean two full moons in the same calendar month.
Across Australia, Asia and parts of the US, the eclipse moon glowed red as sunlight filtered through Earth's atmosphere.
That full moon is just peeking over the horizon. We're getting a spectacular view here, and early evening when it's not quite dark is the perfect time to look at this super moon because close to the horizon it looks even larger.
And on the other side of the planet, clouds permitting, skies will be lit tonight by a moon about 10% bigger that's glowing about 15% more brightly. Sites like this depend entirely on the weather, but space scientists say there's now a renewed focus on returning astronauts to the moon. In 2019, it'll be 50 years since NASA first landed American men on its surface. And this year, India and China will send their own robotic landers. The rest of us back on Earth, though, will have to be satisfied with a particularly good view. Victoria Gill, BBC News.
And for more on the events which had everybody looking up, I'm joined now by Derek Pitts, Chief Astronomer at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. Dr. Pitts, thank you so much for coming on the show. I got up at 4:30 this morning to look at this moon, and I was not disappointed. How exciting, though, is it for you as an astronomer?
It's always great to see these kinds of events when they take place. Whenever a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse occurs, it always gives us an opportunity to understand a little bit more about the dynamics between the Earth, Moon, and Sun system, in fact. So events like this give us a chance to check out a little bit better how accurate our numbers are for distance and speed and things like that.
How much more is there to discover about the moon, though? Because we all seem to take it very much for granted these days.
Oh, there's so much more we have to understand about the moon. You have to remember that while we've been observing it from Earth for as long as we've been looking up, we haven't spent much time on the surface at all. And so there's a tremendous amount that we still have to understand about the origin of the moon, about the construction of the moon, about the materials the moon is comprised of, the internal dynamics of the moon. And we also have to learn as much as we can about what materials are there, what resources are there that can be used to establish research bases or outposts for further exploration of the solar system.
So when you get an event like this that's so rare and so stunning, does that help public actually grasp the significance? I mean, does that mean that there is more impetus to make new discoveries and go back to the moon?
Well, actually what happens with an event like this is this stimulus of public interest, and it comes through doing things like highlighting little factors about the moon's orbit. So, for example, the supermoon idea, that's not a new thing that occurs. There are actually 4 to 6 supermoon opportunities every year, so that's not rare. And the instance of the blue moon, that happens fairly frequently also. Putting all three of them together gives a really great way to sell people on the idea of getting out to observe the moon. So anytime we can heighten people's interest in the moon will also give us a chance to make the case for why we need to do further in situ exploration of the surface, why we need to send people there so that we can gather as much information and learn as much as we can, and again, use it as a jumping off point perhaps for further exploration into the solar system.
You see, I always thought it was just once in a blue moon meant that it never happened. Very briefly, what am I looking for next?
Well, for the next thing that we're looking for, you mean in terms of lunar eclipses and things of that sort? There is a lunar eclipse that comes up later this year, but it's not visible in this part of the world. It's going to be visible on the other side of the world. But there are full moons that can be observed, of course, going on through the rest of the year. And they actually provide an excellent...
I am going to be looking out for all of them. Dr. Derek Pitts, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.